Hi, this is Dr. Sheila Raja, licensed clinical psychologist. Welcome back to my channel. Today, I want to talk about the Epstein files, but more specifically, I want to talk about how we can support survivors of violence and trauma, particularly survivors of childhood sexual abuse, in the hours, days, and weeks and months ahead. If you are a survivor of violence and you're watching this, and you are struggling with your own mental health on a day-to-day basis, if you are having trouble functioning, if you are having thoughts about hurting yourself, please, there are a lot of resources that I have listed in the links, including organizations and hotlines, people that want to help, that are there and, are on your side. So please do reach out for help and do not struggle alone. There are people who care. So if you are watching this and you want to, support somebody, or maybe you are, a survivor of violence and trauma yourself, the first thing that we always talk about, of course, is to step away from too much news and too much social media. We all know that, but on some level, I think it's pretty natural for survivors of trauma to want to honor other survivors by listening to their lived experiences. That's a very natural thing. Um, I think it's okay to try to find a fine line where you say, I have listened enough about generally what somebody has lived through. So, in terms of the specifics, maybe I don't need to read all that. Maybe it's okay for me to step away to protect my own mental health. And that still means that you are respecting what the person has been through. When you do step away, what does that mean? I think we can all use a reminder around grounding techniques. Those are anything that you can do that bring you back to your five senses. So things like, you know, taking some deep breaths, lighting a scented candle if that works for you, taking a walk in nature, hearing the sound of, some sort of, crunchy fall leaves outside. It could be as simple as pouring a really cold glass of water and drinking that and sort of feeling what that feels like. Anything that grounds you in your five senses can be very, very helpful, because I think the other thing is, in terms of social media, we are going to be seeing more of what we call rape myths out there. That was a term that was coined in the 1980s, and it's really false or discriminatory beliefs around sexual trauma. Things like, you could have just prevented this if you did this or did that, or didn't go here or there. It's victim blaming, really. And it comes from a place where people are trying to protect themselves psychologically by saying, if only I don't do this and that, then nothing bad will ever happen, which unfortunately we know that that's not the case. And so um, sometimes, it helps us to at least be able to recognize victim blaming. It doesn't change that it's very, very hurtful, but at least you know that if you can see it, you know that you need to step away. Um, and speaking of that, I think the other thing is, this is not really the time, I think, for most survivors to be engaging in lots of debate on social media around changing people's minds with their lived experience. If you are in the position where you feel like you're working with a trained therapist or have a lot of social support and you feel like that's something you want to do, I think that's obviously an individual decision, but I would caution you to be pretty mindful of that decision and be protective of your own life experiences before you decide to do that. There is plenty of time for those kinds of decisions, and they don't need to be made necessarily right now. If you are somebody who's trying to support somebody through the next days and weeks, you may be wondering what to do. Potentially, you are a very good listener. If you are a good listener and the person is opening up to you, that's great. I would also kind of say maybe you want to think about getting your own support, whether that's a mental health provider or whether that's just friends and family that you can, turn to for your own support. I think that that's important. If you're somebody who feels like, well, maybe I can't take all of that in because it's hard, that doesn't make you a bad person. It means that there may be other ways you can help. Maybe you're the person that can take a walk with that friend of yours, right? You can take the walk. You can say, hey, let's go into the kitchen and make something together. We can cook something. There are other ways that you can help somebody disconnect from news and social media and really reconnect with people. Because when we think about trauma, what it has done is really disrupted our ability to trust other people, and forming those connections and sustaining those connections is really important. When survivors turn to different institutions for help, and those institutions, you know, are disbelieve them or treat them poorly, that's called institutional betrayal. And that can actually lead to something called secondary trauma, which is like, in addition to the initial symptoms, you can make people's symptoms worse. And so anything that we can do, even on an individual basis, it's really powerful. It's really meaningful. I really appreciate that there's so many people engaged in destigmatizing these issues right now. It's incredibly important. Um, so I will include lots of links in this video, including to my book, The Sexual Trauma Workbook for Teen Girls, but many, many, many other resources that I find very helpful. Again, please continue to take care of yourself, take care of each other. If you're interested in this topic, please like and subscribe to these videos. Tell me in the comment section what you want to hear more about. Join me at my website, www.sheilaraja.com, where I blog more about these topics. And together we'll continue to try to create safer communities. Thank you.